Every
Hello.
time. Every time.
Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to episode 37 of the Moana Nui podcast. We're having so much fun tonight. We had a great episode with Demetrius earlier, and now we are so excited to have this special guest on the podcast. My name is Moana McAdams, and I am the host of the Moana Nui podcast, author of the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, editor of the Wildcard Chronicles comic book series, publisher for Burning Spear Comics, and lover of all things indie and indigenous peoples. I am joined tonight by my friend, Mike Watson.
What's up? What's up? Mike Watson over here. I'm the publisher of Short Fuse Media Group, founder of Freestyle Comics, 1/4 of the Agents of Nerdy, and the most enthusiastic person in comics tonight, co-hosting on a Moana Nui podcast show. Shout out to Dana. Hope you're doing good.
Yes. We miss you, sis, and I know you really wanted to be here, so we hope you're doing well. Tonight we are joined by an amazing guest. I'm so excited. Like, I'm a huge fan of Warror, so I'm like fangirling a little bit. But let me tell y'all, if you don't know about him yet, I need you to go to HBO Max and I need you to watch Warror. Do it, but after this podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
After the show.
Yes. So our guest tonight is Mr. Perry Young. He is an American actor and musician from Oakland, California. He plays Father Jun in Cinemax's Warror, produced by Justin Lin, Shannon Lee, and Jonathan Tropper. He was a fan favorite on Pingwu on Steven Soderbergh's The Knick, and has guest starred on Gotham, The Blacklist, and Blue Bloods, just to name a few. His principal roles in film include The Condemned, Jade, Pendant, and John Wick Chapter 2. What? Perry is a member of La Mama Theater's Great Jones Repertory Company of New York. Sorry, a little bit of a tongue twister. He is a multi-award winning Japanese shakuhachi flute craftsman and the first ever supported by both the American and Japanese governments. Perry appeared on stage with Vangelis as a guest soloist in Doha, Qatar in 2012. And so we are super excited, as you can tell, to have him on the show, and we will bring him on now.
Hey.
Hi, Perry.
Hi, Moana. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure. I love that opening music. I was like, Mike, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a hit. Yeah.
Yes, we get a lot of love on our intro music, and I have to give the shout out to my husband because he's responsible for that amazingness that is the Moana Nui podcast. So
that's great.
Yes. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We know how busy you are, and we're just appreciative to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to have, our voices as people of color, have our voices amplified while we tell our stories.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm always just so passionate about particularly uplifting the AAPI community. As fellow Asian American and Pacific Islanders, and helping people to learn more about our cultures and, our perspectives. So let's get started by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up, and how did you find your love of acting?
Wow, that's a long story. That took a lot of detours to get here. I was born in Oakland, California, to Chinese parents, immigrant parents. So it turned out that Oakland was, the first kung fu studio of Bruce Lee. So as I grew up, we started to hear about Bruce, and when he made it big, he became our hometown hero who made it out of Oakland. He just became, as more than just a hero. He's like international icon of the hero for so many people, and for him to have come out of like our little Oakland's Chinatown was like a beam of guiding light for me and a lot of people I grew up with. So that actually, growing up in Oakland, it's a very inner city, urban environment, and it could be rough. If you stepped outside of Chinatown, I'm talking about in the 70s, you can get a little, bullied. There could be some bullying and in school. But, as soon as Bruce Lee made it, it changed the culture. We used to go to these downtown theaters in like, big groups because, we didn't want to get bullied or picked on. But as soon as Kung Fu made it big and Bruce Lee made it big, we were safe. We'd walk around and people were like, hey, you know that stuff? Show us some of that stuff. Before that, it was just like, give me your lunch money, So, I mean, we'd walk around, we'd walk to the theater, those theaters that Quentin Tarantino called grindhouse theaters, where you would see like, 3 movies for $1 in the 70s, and there'd be blaxploitation films, Coolie High, Blackula, and all this stuff. And then we'd see, like 18 Bronze Men of Shaolin back to back. You start going, wow, there's a really interesting culture here in Oakland. There's Black and Asian side by side. We're all sitting in these dark theaters and we're all screaming at the screen. But when Bruce came about, man, suddenly we young Asian Americans were like rock stars. We'd walk to the theaters and there'd be a line around the block to see Enter the Dragon, when Enter the Dragon came out. And then suddenly we'd see these, Black guys wearing Chinese Kung Fu outfits, high-fiving us as we walked into the line. We're like, wow, things changed drastically once Bruce came around, but I, at that time I was, maybe 10 or 11. And, as I started to go to school and after Bruce died, I didn't think that I would ever become become an actor. I went into music and arts, and like for example, I played guitar in rock bands, and when I went to college, I studied art, painting, and like Mike, illustration, and then I got into fine art, and I figured that what was happening, the most important kind of art at that time was performance art in the 80s. And I took a dance class just to kind of learn about my body, because I wanted to learn how to perform, and not in terms of being a performer in the entertainment sense, but performance art that was happening where people use their bodies in a conceptual way. So as I started doing that, I started to really enjoy dance, modern dance and ballet. And some of the instructors at my college, San Francisco State University, took me out of the class, and said, hey, why don't you come and perform with my studio, my dance company, and things like that. So I started getting a lot of attention as a male performer, a dancer. And I, it was fun, being in a room full of women in tights, and, better than, like your art studio, where you're just alone with your paintings,
Right.
So when I graduated and I got to New York City, I was trying to pursue dance and fine arts and music. And, it was difficult because you're just trying to pay the rent, You get to New York City, you don't realize that everybody's just working to pay the rent.
Right.
You're like, this is what it means to be an artist, a struggling artist. You have to figure it out. So, I did some part-time jobs, and I realized very soon that I couldn't make visual arts because I didn't have enough space. Everyone's got 2 or 3 roommates. You have a tiny room if you're lucky. And eventually, I focused on dance. I said, at least if I practice, if I engage in that activity, I could rehearse outside, meet other people. And then I landed in dance, and that led to theater, that led to film. Just to cut a long story short, I auditioned one day for Steven Soderbergh's The Knick. I got in the show, and that started my whole TV film trajectory.
That's amazing. I haven't had a chance to watch The Knick yet, but it's definitely on my list to check out. As I was doing research for the interview, I found that as an actor, you're very selective about the roles that you audition for. What are some of the factors that are important to you as you evaluate potential roles?
Well, as a person of color, your roles are very limited because Hollywood has a way of telling their story. It comes from a systemic um, white supremacist context. It's run by white people who have, for a long time, wanted to tell their stories. So people of color will only fit into how they want you to tell their story. So all those roles are quite limited, and um, I learned from the Black culture earlier on that when they broke out of that in the 60s, late 60s and 70s, that they basically had to make their own films to tell their own stories because Hollywood was not going to do that for them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, because the Black culture was much higher in numbers and population, they have a built-in audience. But for Asian Americans, it's quite difficult for us to um, make our own films and have it be, commercially successful because our numbers as Asian Americans are so small. So we just want to be able to fit in and tell our stories as well as we could, in this larger context of white supremacy. So if the role allows me as an Asian person to be more than a one-dimensional, one-line character, and I can
Mm-hmm.
work with that and sort of like fill it out a little more, break open the box just a little bit, then I would go for those auditions. Very often in the 80s and 90s, there was nothing for us Asian American men. It was like very bad stereotypical roles. But after Justin Lin's Better Luck Tomorrow and Lost on ABC with Daniel Day Kim, we started seeing a
Ah.
lot. Yeah, we started seeing a lot more roles for Asian Americans, and especially Asian American men. So
Mm-hmm.
if the role that I'm auditioning for is a person of color, I'm usually asking, am I going to be able to make that person of color better than what mainstream people see now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a bigger question in the 90s. Uh, Now in 2021, we have way more representation and way more characters, um, and way more Asian American actors. I'm talking about men usually because women have a whole different thing. Um, so if there's room for me to make that character alive and let other people see a person of color as a real human being, I think that can solve a lot of our problems, especially what we're having today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Um, so like as you mentioned, we don't often see a lot of films and stories that are told from an Asian perspective, right? We have typically the white perspective. How did it feel to be a part of a story that's centered on Asian voices, particularly one that was created based on a script written by Bruce Lee?
I mean, it was a dream. It really was a dream I mean, it's a dream for, you can ask anyone in the cast, the Asian actors, and we're all going to say that it was a dream come true because he was again, our guiding light. He was the one that made the mold, of what everyone can try to achieve after in terms of being, because Bruce Lee was born in America. He just couldn't make it here. He had to go back to Hong Kong and then come back eventually, when he started to gain fame to make Enter the Dragon. So for me to actually be cast in that, it was like, the biggest thing that I could have achieved as an Asian American male actor. And I was shocked. I was speechless when they cast me. I really didn't think, um, when I first saw the audition call for it, it was around 2017. And I emailed my manager immediately and said, when they start casting for this, please get me in the room. Any role that they're looking for, get me in the room. So around, a year later, my manager sends me like an audition saying, hey, Warrior's casting and they want you to read for Father Jun. I was like, oh my God, uh, I just stared at the computer monitor for a minute. It's like they want me to read for a character in Warrior. Oh, so I looked at the breakdown and they described Father Jun as a 60s or 70 years old with a glass eye and a shock of white hair, the most notorious gangster in Chinatown. I was
Yes.
like, well, that's not really what I am, but I don't look like that. I don't have the white hair or anything, but I went, okay, I'm just going to read it and see what it says, So the sides, what they give us to audition for was two monologues. And as I read the monologues, I saw, wow, Father Jun is a revolutionary. You
Mm,
know, one of the lines was, "I created the hot way, the most powerful Tong in Chinatown, to prevent the violence of the ducks upon us." You
yes.
know, and I
Yes.
went, Father Jun is Malcolm X. You know, Father Jun is not Martin Luther King or Gandhi here. He's like, I love my people. They're getting killed. I need to build some muscle right now to prevent the killing. And I was like, I'm off for that. All right. I know what that is. I know what that is. So I
Absolutely.
found ways to identify with Father June, and it was like it was aligned. Oh yes, Michael. All right. Yeah, Father June. There he is. That's good. You got some skills, Michael.
Thank you
I
very much. I appreciate it. Like I said, this is my favorite scene that you're in because you just the way you come across scene and just lay down the law with people, and like I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and like I don't mean to be knocked, but like you're such a calm, kind person. Your voice is so gentle, but when you're on that screen, you're a beast. Like it's a whole nother person on that screen. I'm like, wow, like the acting chops on you to like be this whole completely different thing. Like it's really really cool.
well, that's one of the things that, as I'm gonna as an actor, or or what acting allows a person, is that you can fantasize, and you can actually
Mm,
be something that you're not, or you could tap into something that you're afraid to touch in real life. So growing up in Oakland, I understood the struggle of people of color. Understood by the struggle of my Black brothers. I understood the pain of people of color. So those things I let out in Father June.
Hmm.
Those things I let out in Pingwu and the Knick, because I don't do it in real life. In real life, I'd rather love, love everyone. It just feels better to love than to hate. But I understand that sometimes you have to like use a little force. If like, I agree with Malcolm X. If they're going to come and kill you, you have to be prepared to fight back. So I
mm,
just, although I don't live with that, I understand it, and I understand it really well. Seeing a lot of violence in Oakland, and even today. So being an actor allows me to like explore those things in a character.
mm.
So again, that it goes back to Warrior being a gift, in that it allows my activist side to show and to work and to free itself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
I
yeah,
love.
very very impressive, man. Like the swagger you carry in each scene. Like when you're there, it's like it's commanding, and like we know you're the boss. And like one of my favorite things of the show is the language, the vocabulary that you guys have come up with, and that little subtle change when you guys switch languages, and it's
Hmm.
just a camera pan,
Hmm.
and I
Yes.
was, me and my wife were like, "Did you see that? That's how they're. Oh, that's dope. That's dope. More
Yeah,
shows need to do that because
right.
it made so much sense. It was still the language of the people, but we could understand it, and it made sense with that transition. It was just a quick turn. Whoever did that, bravo! Like I
That
mean, so
that was
many good things.
that was Jonathan Tropper, the showrunner and the writer, who was also the showrunner and writer for Banshee,
Okay.
uh,
Yes.
and a new show now on Apple called C. But yes, Jonathan's brilliant. He's such a just an amazing writer in terms of knowing the characters and how to draw human dynamics. I mean, a well-rounded human characters, and that's why I love Warrior, because I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't worry about these little boxes that we were going to be forced into, like we would normally in any other Hollywood mainstream network show that doesn't center on people of color, voices of people of color.
Yeah.
Jonathan is so aware of that, and also working with Justin Lin and Shannon, you knew you were in good hands. You knew what the show was about, and yeah. So it's just a gift to be on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, just everything about this show, like, every character was well written. Like, I loved every character, no matter what side they fell on. Like, they were so fleshed out, and you could, like, feel their perspective. Just whoever was on the screen, the dynamics were great. Um, especially between you and Young Jun. Like, even though you guys had a dynamic relationship, it was he was a little, he had his temper, and you were like the opposite, where you're just like stoic, like, nope, I don't have to say a lot, but everybody knows that I'm in power. So how did you and Jason build rapport and grow your relationship off set?
Well, first of all, this is a little funny circle. In the time that I had stopped acting because I had children, and so it was like, and then I found that my flute making work actually brought in more money than my theater work. So about that time, we needed to get insurance, medical insurance. So my partner said, she'll go to grad school. She's also a performer, dancer, and theater performer. So she was the one that would be more likely to get a master's than me. So she went and got her master's, and now she's teaching, and we have insurance. But I was at home making flutes and repairing flutes, and about that time, I was getting itchy. I just wanted to get back into theater and performing. And then Justin Lin's "A Better Luck Tomorrow" came out, and then it was a film it was Jason Tobin's first film. And I went and I watched Jason, and I went, that's an interesting character. He's not a stereotype. He's not something we've seen before in Asian American, what we're presented from in Hollywood. I like that guy. He's a little punk, he's kind of funny, and he's kind of violent. He's kind of on the edge. You don't know if he's going to do something, and then he does it or not. It turns out that that's what he is in Young June also, right?
Yeah.
So like that was around 2007 when I saw it. So 11 years later, I get cast in Warror, and I'm playing his father. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. So I had in some way been enamored of Jason before I met him, and then meeting him on the set, finding out that he's just a super chill guy. Super chill, super sweet, super giving. When you're working with an actor, you want an actor that's talking to you,
Yeah.
It's giving, you don't want somebody that's just talking at you and never listening to you. So right. Jason's one of those guys who just, he's been around long enough. He really knows this, has some serious chops about, acting, and understands the culture really well. And
yeah.
His thing about Kung Fu is Bruce Lee can be the best Kung Fu artist, but he wants to be the Bruce Lee of acting, and so it's like he's got goals, he's got goals. So when I hooked up with Jason, we would read, and we just have fun, and we'd laugh, we just clicked. And I went, and I said to him, this is kind of the first time I think in Hollywood history, in American TV, that you're going to see a Chinese father and son, for real. Like there's Fresh Off the Boat for ABC, but it's like comedic. It's a sitcom, so it's not real, like drama, like real situations.
Right.
So you have here an arc of a real dramatic situation between a Chinese father and a Chinese son, and we played it that way. That this is a real relationship that people are gonna like see for the first time. And one of the biggest compliments I've gotten several times actually are from Chinese guys who said, when they watch Father Jun and Young Jun, they think that like their father's talking to them, which we never get from American TV.
Right.
We're invisible. We don't matter. We don't count. We don't see ourselves. So this is the first time that when people say that, it just warms my heart, because I feel like Jonathan gave us a gift. He gave me a gift. He gave everyone a gift with the Warrior.
Yeah.
And Shannon Lee.
Yeah.
I love your relationship with your son, Jun, on there. It does the one thing that I hate in other shows is that whole, like, I'm mad at my dad, and it's just written there because it's plot. Like, it made sense. It was a natural recourse with him, because like you got to see the steps where he got there. Like, he respects you, he knows that you have experience, he knows that you've been there, and he really does try to hear you on it. But he goes outside and has these other outside interference, and you, the way you pull off, like, I know somebody's in your ear right now, and it's irritating the hell out of me. Like, I know it is, but like I'm your dad, listen to me, trust me. There's so many subtleties that you pull off in being his dad that isn't even verbal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, I think people were obviously saying that because, like, I just picked up on all that. Like, that was like, it's just dope, man. Like, I'm a
Uh,
fan.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for saying that because like when you see the words on the paper, they're just words on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Jonathan's a great writer because he knows that he just has to give you a seed, and then the good actor will water it, and it's going to become something, Because if you like, I brought a lot of Jonathan also knows the family dynamics and father and son and Greek tragedies really well. He knows that one day the son's going to kill the father for power. That's very Greek tragedy, like Shakespearean stuff. He didn't actually write that in there, but he understands those things. So he just has to plant the seed. Oh yeah, there you go. Looking good. You got the suit too, man.
Oh, you was always baller in the show, baby. We
Yes.
gotta keep it like
Yes.
that.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll take a question from someone, one of our viewers, Celeste Luna. Perry, in your perspective, do you find Assam's character was written as a petulant man-child, or am I going crazy? Oh my gosh, don't hate me. I love Andrew Koji, but that was a complaint of mine.
I don't think Andrew makes his own choices. It wasn't like I said earlier about like Jonathan will drop the seed, but the actor has to water it and bring it to life.
Yeah.
So I would say that Andrew made his choices, and he might have gotten guidance from the showrunners, the producers, because it's all, we shape it together.
Mm-hmm.
No one does anything solo. You collaborate. It's a very highly collaborative environment. I would say that Andrew made his choices, and then Jonathan or other producers or Shannon might say, "Oh, I like that," as opposed to "Don't do that." Like
Mm-hmm.
they're very positive. They say, "I like that part. I like that. I like that. Keep that. I like that." There's never any "Don't do that." Because that's stunting the growth of something. You want to
Right.
water the positive things. So in terms of
Mm-hmm.
how an actor, a good actor hears what should be watered, and then they interpret it and assimilate it themselves. And I think it might also come down to your perspective of what you feel of Andrew, and it's quite fair. But I would say a lot of people love Andrew's character also, and how he keeps it toned down in a way. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I enjoyed Assam personally. I thought it was pretty badass, especially like in the opening scene. He's like, y'all not gonna push me around here.
Mhm.
Somebody's getting these hands. So
Yes.
He's got a little chip on his shoulder for sure.
yes, and
You
I'm
know,
like, I'm okay with that. Like I'm good with that.
everybody in this show has to have a little chip on their shoulder.
Yes,
But
Yeah.
it
yes.
but it makes sense that people have the chip on the shoulder. Like, it
Mhm.
just flows so perfectly. Like, I get it. Like, there was never a time when I watched a show and I was like, that literally doesn't make any sense. Why is he doing that right now? Like, that's
Dude,
dumb.
Leary, I love Leary.
Like, everything had a built up, everything it was clearly explained, and like it was just real good. Like, it was like a lot of the characters were my voice for my own frustration. Like, if I could roundhouse kick somebody in the jaw like that, man, I'd feel real good right now. You know what I'm saying? But that expression, like when somebody's always like, you got one more time, but every time in y'all show, that one more time always happens and y'all get hit.
I would say, how you were just Mike, you were just saying how I'm kind of like the opposite of Father June.
Hmm.
The other person like that is Leary, is Dean Jagger. He's
Really?
like he's a puppy dog.
What?
Really?
He is a sweet, sweet puppy dog. He's just the sweetest guy. We hung out so much. We trained together. We rode to training together every day. He stayed nearby me. He's just a sweet, sweet guy. Very sensitive, very soft. Yeah. So these are. I mean, I love.
Interesting.
Yeah, everyone in the cast. They're just so talented.
Yeah, because I mean, he was a badass. I love Leary's character. Like, yeah, when he would come on scene, I'm like, oh, he's another one. Like, silent, but underneath there, it's like a storm's brewing.
And I can tell, yeah, with Dean or Leary, he is one of those guys where acting gave him something, gave him a way to deal with a lot of other things that society
Mm.
has forced upon him, and he didn't know how to release in a healthy way. So I
Yeah.
think that acting gave him that, for him to be that character, and then
Mhm.
off screen he's like the puppy dog. It's just like, yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
That's a nice little point right there. I like that.
Yeah. This is cool. We get insights about the other characters too. Um, so you're a history buff and obviously a champion of Chinese American history. That's one of the things that I love about the show is like, I mean, I was one of the ignorant ones who knew nothing about the Exclusion Act. So like I was learning in this show, which is I
Right.
love this. Whenever I can watch a show and it teaches me something, I'm all about it. So what kind of research did you have to do or did you do for your own self or just for the development of the story prior to starting your role?
Well, I know my history really well because, again, I have an Asian American Studies minor in college,
Ah,
and
okay.
so I know about racism very well because I know that the laws shaped our culture, our lives, and prevented us from having families in America. So that was nothing new to me, and I brought that kind of knowledge to the set of the Knick also, which I think helped my character understand things and behavior. But for Warrior, I think that I had to understand why Father Jun would fight so aggressively against, what was it about Father Jun in the lines that I could make my own, that was taken off the page, because it was, it could be quite didactic also, in the same way that just espousing hate vehemently, and I didn't want Father Jun to be that character.
Mm.
So I had to research. The first thing that hit me, like I said, was Malcolm X. So I did more research on Malcolm X. I knew that he had a relationship with Yuri Kochiyama, a Japanese American woman who was
Mm-hmm.
in the concentration camps in America. So, and I knew they had a relationship to create solidarity, to fight racism together. So, in reading about Malcolm X through Yuri Kochiyama's writings, I found out that Malcolm X was actually a very nice guy, you know? So, like, when Yuri Kochiyama had these revolutionary meetings about revolution in her Harlem apartment with all these activists and revolutionaries, and Malcolm X would come, and he would come quietly, and he would meet people after, shake their hands, and spend time talking to them. And everybody would say, "Oh, Malcolm is so nice." You know, and you're like, nobody knows that. Who's going to tell that story?
Right.
Who in Hollywood is going to say Malcolm X was a really nice guy? But when it came to racism, he was not nice about that.
Right.
So I took that into Father Jun, and so that underneath all of that, I'm hoping that um, the seed of love for his people can be felt, and because I just didn't want the character to come across with one tone, and there had to be something underneath that inspires that tone, or gives him the intention, and that has to be a kind of mystery, a magic that people hopefully would find compelling, but not understand right away why, because it's just not overt. Like, sometimes you
Mm.
connect with people and you don't know why you like them so much. You don't know why you have simpatico with some people you meet. You just like them, you know. And so I wanted that character about Father Jun, even though he's like this badass dude. um and so that was the kind of mental preparation I had to do for my character. And then, aside from that, I would meet Jason a lot, and we ended up just hanging out a lot, and talking and having fun. Jason plays music, also guitars. So
Oh.
we both went and bought guitars when we were in Cape Town, because we didn't have our guitars with us. And then we'd sit around and we'd strum and we'd drink beer and we'd talk, and then we'd actually do scenes in between all of that. And so it was really bonding stuff.
Yeah.
But we found a lot of great moments, just so that kind of research is fun, and it's invaluable.
I love how you incorporated that. I mean, it definitely comes through in the character. I mean, it's clear. Father Jun doesn't play no games when it comes against his people. people. And I get that's one of the main reasons why I love him. I mean, so many reasons. It's a multifaceted character. It's definitely not one dimensional. So I think you did an amazing job with
Thank
him.
you.
Yeah.
It's also, because of the father and son stuff, it's
Mhm.
easy to just see father against son, son angry at father, like Mike said.
Yeah.
But then it was like I really had to look at young June like, why do I want him to succeed? I'm not just bossing him around. Why do and he shouldn't feel like I'm just trapping him, but there has to be some love, something about it that's not written on paper.
Mhm.
And from my perspective, it's just that you have to understand this is the culture of old China,
Right.
Confucianism and patriarchy. You have to respect your elders. You don't question your elders because your elders are looking out for you. You are their future. In China, there's no social security. The kids will bring there's no convalescent homes. The kids will take care of their parents to the end of their days. So
It's
Mhm.
that's
never.
why,
I've never
yeah.
heard it said like that before.
So that's why young June has to succeed. That's why he has to learn the right way because he's going to be taking care of me in my old age.
Mhm.
And young June has his own reasons. That's not on paper. We have to find that in inside of our characters, our lives.
Right. And I think
That's
that's
dope.
also what makes it so amazing is that because it is an Asian centered show, because it's told from, Asian cultural perspective, you can leverage like your own, real life experiences and knowledge and really make it feel authentic, which is what I feel is missing in a lot of the other movies. So I think that's, what makes this another reason why this show is so special. And I just really enjoy just watching it and watch the story unfold, like all the different dynamic relationships and the actors. I can tell that everybody is really trying to give their best to make the story like the best that it could be. Um,
Like the actors, the cast have become quite close, and even early on in the we sort of bonded really quickly, and I think it's just because of the fact that it's Shannon. Shannon was there, and it's a Bruce Lee story, and he's our hero, so we didn't want to mess it up. You know,
mhm.
it was it was like once I saw Shannon Lee, I was like, I better not screw this up. You know,
Yes.
it was like it was real, it's like we have to get the love was there. You don't a lot of TV shows made in from Hollywood it's made from it being a part of a machine with an end product, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of people involved in making this thing an end product, but very very little of it is comes from an actual story and love, labor of love to make the story realized. You have that in independent films, like we
Mhm.
have Minari recently
Yes.
and things like that. The independent films have that love because it's just one director, one writer's story to make this one film. But when you have a series from Hollywood, it's a machine, and that
Mhm.
machine has to make money. So it's very often not coming from a place of love,
Right.
but that love was so apparent from the get-go in Warrior.
Yep. It definitely comes through. Um So like in The Warrior and in Boogie, which is the your newest movie that's
Uh,
coming out, or it just recently came out, you carry the critical role of a father. Um, how has your relationship with your own children and family influenced what you bring to the roles on set?
wow, that it's pretty funny you say that, yeah, because as soon as I came out of my acting retirement, after the first role, I was a father in nearly all my roles. It was like, wow, that taught me something. You know, like before I was a father, and there was nothing for me in Hollywood because of the time that it was happening. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time to be a father, coming out with the sort of roles available. But so that time I took to be a father really was life experience. You know, I in the same way that I see this 1 year off from COVID as life experience, it's a time to learn. I felt sometimes I felt like, oh wow, my career, it's kind of over. I'm not an actor anymore. I'm going to focus on being a flute maker. I'm very happy with that. But there's something about acting, that you just have to get on stage. You get it, there's something you have to satisfy by getting under the lights. And I think that being the parent, taking that 9 years out of my life to make sure the kids had a stay-at-home father, stay-at-home parent, taught me something about the importance of life and what is really important in your life. The whole old adage of you can't take it with you is so true. So you're going to amass a lot of money. I read all these things about being a parent. It's like, are you going to go to work, 60 hours a week, never see your family, and then your kids are going to graduate, and then suddenly you've missed out on all that, and you die with some money, but no experience of family. So, I think my children are my greatest gifts. I think they teach me the most about life. I think they're going to be my ultimate, learning. Because leaving them as responsible human beings on Earth is my biggest goal. So that I guess that carries on into like what I do with my roles. Like hopefully, when people, for an acting student or even anyone who studies art and music, you always look back and reference things that you like and things that have been done that you want to emulate or do better. And so you have your famous people are always studying Robert De Niro, and things like that on how to act, and then they make it their own. So it's like I want to be able to leave something real that people look at and go, oh, I should go look at what he did. People do that with musicians all the time, like study historical musicians and see how they broke the mold and made their own voice and how they pursued their own sort of reality and shared that with an audience. So those things are really important. And I think that having children really teaches you to find your own reality.
That's a great perspective and a way to look at that. I love it.
Thanks.
Let's see.
And I love what Mike is doing.
I know. It's amazing. This is why, hey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
This is great. You don't mind if I take a little screenshot here and there and maybe post it to you?
I'm going to send it to you. It's yours.
Yes,
I love this collaborative aspect of this interview. It's so collaborative and it's really inspiring. Actually, you guys are great.
This is how we work. Yeah, it's more fun that way. Like everybody gets to contribute their talent, and we make a better show and have better relationships with our guests. So it's amazing. So we talked a little bit about the details of being a father and how you incorporated that into the show. I saw a lot of comments online about like the accuracy of the set details, right? Like this was filmed in South Africa, which I thought was pretty amazing. And there were actually a lot of extras that were actually of Chinese descent, which is really cool. And you created your own documentary talking with some of the folks that, were a part of the movie. Tell us a little bit about that. What were some of the big takeaways that stood out to you from those interviews? And being able to engage with that community.
The first time I walked on set, I saw like hundreds of Chinese, and I went, "Whoa, where did they come from?" So it's like we're in South Africa, right? It was like, where'd they find these people? And it was like, it turns out that, that they did actually work hard to get them into a group. It wasn't like there was a Chinatown, not like New York City or San Francisco or Cuba, even. There wasn't a Chinatown. So but there was quite a large population of Chinese, and they had been arriving since the 1600s, I was told, on slave ships from China. Yeah, so the earliest Chinese were digging diamonds and building railroads in the same way that the Chinese were all over the U.S. when they were taken from or offered this indentured servitude kind of labor to leave the Guangdong province of China. So I started to ask some of them where they were from, and they were like, "Oh, somebody sent me a message on my Facebook, like if I was interested in doing this because they were a student." And it's like, "Oh, you're a student," and then met another extra that was like a pre-med student, and another that was studying law, and then another that was just a waiter, and then you had then there was like older elders that they got from a senior center of Asians. So, and they were all having a blast because a lot of them said they'd never been in one place with that many Chinese before. And that was on that set, right, of Chinatown in South Africa. They had never been in like a huge population of Chinese. That was pretty fascinating. And then with some of the older people, they spoke they spoke Cantonese, the original language of that area of China where they were immigrated from. And quite a few of them spoke a certain dialect called Hoisan, which is the original village that those boats went to in China that had, that brought all the Chinese to America and Cuba. They came from the special Hoisan region of Guangdong, which is where my father came from also. So when I heard the language, I went, "Oh my God, you sound like my uncle." It was like it wasn't like it was, I would, to compare it to English, it would be like a very Southern hick Texas drawl compared to a sort of New England English, which is mostly the Cantonese of Hong Kong is the very New England proper English. But the Hoisan is like a very Southern drawl, it's a very sort of kind of hillbilly, So when I heard that, I was like, "Oh my God, I feel at home here." So I had to interview them. I was like, "Who are you? How did you get here?" So I made this documentary, and I just, it's just fascinating that they are as unique and individual as anybody else. We see them as just one group of people, but when you talk to every single individual, they each have a voice and an origin and dreams, and history. So it's so fascinating.
I love that. I mean, and as you know, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast too, is to hear about people and their origins and, what makes them tick. How did they end up where they are? I find that fascinating as well. Like, because people, we see each other and we make judgments sometimes, right? But then, like, as you get to know people and you hear more about their background, you're like, "Oh, I have something in common with them. Maybe I don't feel the way I thought I did before."
So what you're doing is so important, like you're amplifying our voices, in the same way that Warror is. I mean, we need more of this.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I've been writing in my social media about trying to get a Warror season 3 is
Yes.
you're actually making a difference right now. Imagine if we didn't have Warror at all right now. What would the Asian community be saying and looking at? I mean, there's so many people pointing at Warror and saying that show represents, it gives Asian people visibility. It gives them humanity. They're all characters. We know who Father Jun is. We know who Young Jun is. We know who Assam is. We know, these people are real and we can identify with them. So if we have more of that, and which is also what you're doing, is amplifying our voices, there will be more understanding and unity and solidarity and and breaking down the systems that actually keep people apart. So Warror is something that is fighting the system that's keeping people apart. So how do we get a season 3? As we ask HBO Max and the producers to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. We can use a little more of it."
Absolutely. Yes, HBO Max. We need more.
More, because it's doing good.
Yeah.
It's so good. So good. So good. Let's take another question from the audience from J-Man, who is one of our regular viewers on both myself and Mike's show. Mr. Young, what actor or actors would you love to work with but haven't yet?
Wow. Okay. Oh, I mean, it's so it's endless. I mean, like if I just have to say, first of all, okay, there's I'm going to go to Hong Kong. I'm going to go to a Chinese film. I'm going to say Tony Leung, Leung or Lung, and he's a famous Hong Kong actor. He's been in these big Wong Kar-wai movies, like the recent Grandmaster. He's just this incredibly deep and sensitive actor that just like his presence just he just emits, and there's no struggle in what he does. He just tells the story, and he's one of those where I was saying earlier to Mike, he's so giving in his performance that he just invites the other actor to have a conversation every time. So those are the kind of actors that I really love to work with, and I go to Hong Kong immediately because I want to. I've been trying to decolonize myself for many years, and a lot of people will expect me to say a Hollywood A-lister, but I'm trying to say, that's no longer my target. I don't need to be that because that's somebody else's story. Mainstream Hollywood is somebody else's machine. I want to start a new machine. I want to start a new machine with you, Moana and Mike. you know, it's a new machine of people of color and unity.
Absolutely. We're here for you. We
Absolutely.
are always down to collaborate. Yes.
I would say Denzel Washington.
Oh, yes.
Let me get in the scene with Denzel.
Oh my God. That would be so dope. Like I'm thinking Book of Eli with like Father Jun coming from the roads of San Francisco.
I love
I can see that. I can see that.
Right. Anybody know Denzel? You watching?
Mr. Washington, we need you too.
Absolutely.
Yes, huge fan of his as well. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Or Morgan Freeman, right? Morgan Freeman is one of those guys. He's so giving. He's just so giving. Like I want to be your friend.
Yeah. Yes, he's the icon. Morgan Freeman. Yes. Let's see. Question from Dennis Gee. Do any of the Warrior characters remind you of your Oakland Chinatown friends?
They all do. They all do. I see them. I see every one of them in my Oakland Chinatown friends. Yeah, and even my New York City Chinatown friends. There's so many characters that are real, and and that's the thing. When you just have a good script and you hire the right writers and you get the right actors in, and those actors know their history. It becomes so real. One of the things I was doing research on earlier, we were talking about with Malcolm X, was Malcolm has said, you got to know your history, because if you don't know your history, you don't know where you're going.
Yep.
So all these characters that I'm working with, they know their history really well. They know how to do their homework, who they're portraying, how are they going to make it better than before. We all have our little goals that no one else needs to know about. But I know that a lot of these actors just do their homework. It's their quiet homework. And they're kind of, sometimes they're secret and we don't tell each other what our secret homework is, but it makes a difference, it makes a difference.
Yes, absolutely. So J-Man, just a comment, he's saying that his best friend's Chinese and was born in Hong Kong, and he's learned so much about the culture. And there are similarities of his family being immigrants, like also of his Irish great-great-grandparents. Yes, the ducks and the onions. I love it. Like, I don't know who came up with that, but that was another unique aspect of the show.
Jonathan Tropper.
The language is great. I absolutely love it. I love it. Like,
itchy
like
onion.
it did. Like some shows, like even like futuristic shows or sci-fi shows, try to force these made-up words, and you can tell they're made up, and like they just keep saying it. But instantly, when I heard scrap, I was like, that works. That really does work. I ain't never said that before, but that works. Like everything, the slang, that was all came up for that show. Every single word worked.
Jonathan is great. The writers are all fabulous because it just flows. When you can memorize your lines easily and it comes out without force, that the writers are good because it's just natural. And they did come up with that, Mike, when you were talking about when they turned the camera around, that concept so that we can speak in another kind of vernacular that brings the audience in without us making up an accent, even because a lot of the actors didn't have a Chinese accent, you know, so they did make it up to Chinese accent. So why don't we just make something that fits universally? And then we brought in or they brought in the slang, you know, and I would say, you get me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it was part of the gangster language. You get me?
It was it was just very smart, and it's a very simple fix. It's a super simple, clever fix, and I just respect. It's those little things that make the ship stay afloat, and you don't realize how dope they are, how big they are until you actually see them in play. And there's a lot of things like that going on in the show that I really just like.
I'm
Yes.
jealous. I'm jealous of those actors who get to switch from Cantonese to English, you know, and Cantonese to English and English with an accent, you know, like the character
Right, right.
Wang Chao, or
Yes.
Olivia Toy,
Hmm.
Atoy that plays Olivia.
Atoy.
They
Hmm.
can go from Cantonese to English, in our slang, to English with an accent, because when they're around the white people, they have to have an
Yep.
accent. So I was like, oh my God, I wish I could do that, you know? But I'm stuck in my own world in Chinatown, so I'm just gonna have our vernacular language, because they get to show all those different shades of who they are when they speak in the different languages. You know,
Right.
Yes.
it's wearing different hats. It's kind of cool.
Yes. I love Hoon Lee. I mean, he was in Banshee too, and oh my God, he is such a talented actor as well. Like
Mm.
very dynamic. Like he can go like do a whole lot of different ranges. I just his character Job on Banshee was like I live for every scene that he was in. I was like, is he coming back yet? Please, please.
Mm. He's so fun. He's so fun. I had so much fun. Just if you know Hoon too, and you're watching his craft as
Hmm.
an actor, you just laugh because you know him, you know, and then you know what he's doing, you know. And but I also have that much fun watching everybody, you know, because I
Yeah.
get to know them off camera, and I get to
Hmm.
know them as who they really are. And then when I see them on screen, it's just, oh my God, I love them so much because they're having so much fun, you know. They're
Right.
just they're having so much fun being someone else. It's just they're so adorable.
Oh, yeah, such a great cast. I mean, Atoy, she was definitely one of my favorite characters
Yes.
too. Like,
I,
she was
Go
another
ahead.
one not to be messed with. Like, and you wouldn't expect it, right? You would think, oh, she's just a madam. Like, who is that? But she was not someone to be played with either.
No, you know, she's a vigilante, right?
They made me so happy. They made me so happy when she did not get rescued by anybody, and
Thank
she
you.
had to do those fights on her own, and like she had to
Oh,
figure out how to do it. Like they did a great job of building her up, and you're like, oh, she's dope. Oh, she's a badass. Oh, we got this. Oh, those some big boys though. What's she gonna
oh,
do? And then like, and the just her commitment to it, that character's commitment to it, and saying, I'm gonna pull this off. I'm gonna do it. And she got hurt. She got messed up, but she did it. And then she then had the gumption to go finish the job and go to old boy's house. Like how much strength of character is that? She cut off their heads, brought them to the house, sat there patiently, signed these papers.
it, is that amazing? Is that amazing or what? Right? Like, so
Yes.
that's the kind of stuff that why people love this show, because it also offers Asian women another role that, you
Yes.
know, it's a trope, right? We know that the madam in a brothel is a trope that
Mm.
people like Hollywood cast that.
Hmm.
Hollywood has stories of the madam in an opium den. Because those characters did exist in Chinatown because of
Hmm.
the Chinese Exclusion Act. There were no women, so they were smuggled in. So because of that trope, Hollywood likes to play it up for its exoticism, you know. But Warrior deconstructs that and adds more to it. Oh, you like to look at Asian women as these sex, you know, killer sex objects? Okay, let's make them killer. Let's make them kill white people. You know, I mean, it's pretty, off. And at the end of the day, it offers it in a very artistic, entertaining way that we can
Hmm.
enjoy it and not be too riled up about certain things, but understand that we have work to do.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Now I know we're coming too close to the end of the hour. Mr. Young, do you have a little bit more time, or are you pressed for the hour?
You know what? I have a little more time if
Okay.
there's yeah.
Yeah, there's just like one more question from the audience, and then there was another one I wanted to ask you about the flutes. Mr. J, man, how many different Chinese languages and dialects can you speak or understand?
Well, I can speak Cantonese as my first language. I studied Mandarin in college, so I could converse a little bit. I have acted in television and film in both those languages. I would say that I'm not fluent in both of those. And I have also studied Japanese because of my shakuhachi flute work. But it was only at a very basic level to sort of ask for directions, to make appointments, order food, very basic things in Japanese. So Cantonese and Mandarin, I believe, are although they're Chinese, they're kind of two different languages. Uh,
Mm,
and then Japanese.
got it. That's very cool. So, yeah, let's talk about the flutes for a little while. In addition to being an actor, you're also a musician and a craftsman of the shakuhachi flute. What led you to shakuhachi, and how did you learn to create them?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the streamlined version of that. I can
Yeah.
dance
Yes.
but I heard it in a show at La Mama Theater in 1994. I was performing in the role of Oedipus in a show called Oedipus the King, directed by Ellen Stewart, the late great Ellen Stewart of La Mama. One of the pit musicians was playing a shakuhachi, and it was an orchestra of experimental music, also electric guitars, drums, Japanese instruments, and all this stuff. So very, very experimental performance. And one night during a show, it was silent, and then I heard this really thin voice, this flute, and it was just so powerful because of the
Yeah.
silence. And it was just like, it was me on stage and that flute, that's all I heard. And it was just so captivating that after the show, I went and found the musician Yukio Tsuji. I said, "What instrument is that?" And he just holds up this bamboo flute and he goes, "Oh, the shakuhachi." And he had this look in his eye, was like, "Oh, you heard it, didn't you?" Yeah, it's magic.
It
So
is.
yeah. So long story short, I was a struggling artist. I couldn't afford it. Eventually, I just had to learn how to make it because I was an artist. And so I went to Yukio's studio. I started copying his flutes, very rudimentary, going to the flower market in New York City, buying bamboo poles, going to Yukio's, measuring his flutes, making it. So I was making and playing at the same time. And then did that for a couple of years, and then eventually got a grant to go to Japan on the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, who supports American artists studying a traditional Japanese crafts. And then I worked with my master in Japan, Kinya Sogawa,
Mm.
in making the Zen flute and professional instruments, and playing a specialized music that the Zen monks played. Um, so it's a very specialized sort of world I went into. Um, but it was just kind of opened me up to like the bigger universe.
Yeah. There's something about that flute that just totally like hits you like right in your soul, and it's very peaceful too. Like whenever I hear it, I'm like I automatically stop and just kind of center myself, I guess. It's so beautiful, and I particularly listened to the most recent piece that you did for your friend Corky Lee, who may he
Oh,
rest in peace, and that was so beautiful. It had the ocean waves in there too, and I was like, oh.
yeah, yeah. So what makes it captivating is it's also used a lot in Hollywood films since the 70s, and nobody knows really, about the name is not, it's not a household name, but you've heard the flute because it's used in the Hollywood soundtracks, and it's a
Mhm.
very evocative sound. It kind of conjures up these, emotions really easily. And a lot of the calming aspects come from the way that it's played because the monks played it for meditation. So it's written
Yeah.
in the music where you take a breath and then you blow a long note, and you take another breath and you might blow two notes, but all the exhalation is done, all the notes are played on the exhalation, then you can feel the inhalation again. So it regulates your breathing and calms your senses. Like
Yeah.
nobody knows that.
Yeah.
When you're listening, nobody knows that they're listening to that. But after a while, you're breathing with the player, you know? So eventually it's very calming. And that's one of the most amazing things that, drew me to the flute was it, ancient human beings have these secrets that contemporary human beings just don't know about, but all we have to do is go back to what our ancestors did,
Yes.
before there was a lot of technology. It's like, what did they do? And that can resolve a lot of our issues that we have, and whatever it is, mental or physical.
Yeah. I totally agree with that for sure. Someone's asking for a little solo. Brad, probably not tonight.
Yeah, it's too late here for me to play in my apartment.
Yeah.
Sorry, but if you want, you can. I think Moana, you could share something maybe at the end if you put it together,
Yeah.
or you can go to my YouTube, Young Flutes
Yeah.
YouTube, and listen to a lot of them.
Yeah, I can put that in the links. And he also has a website at youngflutes.com. And his YouTube has like some tutorials and instructionals where he shows you how you can, how he plays it and regulating your breathing, like he just talked about. It's amazing. Okay, and then one last question from Celeste Luna. What are Perry's thoughts on AMXF today? I'm not sure I know what AMXF is.
I don't know what that is either.
Okay, let's see. Celeste, can you let us know what that means, and hopefully we can try to answer that. No, Brad said, "Oh, it was worth a shot."
Now I want to Google that. What is AMX?
I know. I'm like,
Is it XS or SX?
AMXF. Let's see.
What's up, Brad? J-Man, I saw your compliment earlier. Thanks. JD, if you're still watching, it's not vector art. It's just Procreate is the program that I use, and I'm just drawing with a couple different brushes. And I think that was all of them.
Okay. AMXF is Asian male and non-Asian female. Is that what Celeste means? Like an Asian male and not Asian female relationship. I mean, if that's what she means, Asian male and non-Asian female. Well, I would just say that I am one of those people that had plenty of non-Asian female relationships, and also Asian female relationships. And I think that I don't have a judgment because it's not my call to judge people on who they see. And I know that in other communities, it's a very politicized thing.
Yeah.
Who you date as a person of color is politicized. And I think that it's up to the individual to understand how they can talk about it themselves, because if you don't know how to talk about it, it means that you are sort of part of systems that are working,
Yes,
to corral you into dating certain people, so that if you do know how to talk about it, then you've sort of you're undoing those systems, and then that's freeing. It's quite freeing to undo those systems. You could say that you could date only one kind of person because those systems you don't want to be criticized, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate that you could only date within your race, because I see that apply towards Black women and Black men too. If you date outside your race or marry, then you're kind of selling out to the colonialists, things like that. So it's unfortunate that those criticisms are out there on individuals, but they harm, at the end of the day, they harm people of color more than the mainstream white European race.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good point.
What a way to end.
Yes.
Well, I finished the piece up. This was very, very fun. I appreciate the chance to draw you in all of your badassery, sir.
That's right.
I gotta take a picture of this. Oh my God, that is so awesome. That is so amazing. Mike, you are an amazing artist.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I very much so appreciate that.
And Moana, thank you. What a great interviewer you are, and I applaud you and both your work here. Again for giving us a forum.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure for us to do it. I mean, it's all part of the community and working together to just help each other rise up together. So
Awesome.
yes.
Well said. Rise up together. Rise up together, right? That's what it's about.
Yes.
All what is it? A rising tide lifts all boats. That's one of my favorite quotes.
That's great.
With the
Beautiful.
the ocean theme that I like to use for the podcast. But yeah, so thank you so much for giving us a little bit extra of your time. We really appreciate it. And it's just been so much fun. We learned so much in this interview. And come on, HBO Max, season 3, 4, 5. I need more. We need more.
Yes,
Please,
yes,
please,
absolutely.
please. Guys, write to HBO Max. If you want to see more Warrior, drop your emails in there. Give them calls. You know how this works. Hit them up on their Facebook pages. Tweet them. Like Twitter. Twitter is like, they pay attention to that stuff. So definitely show the love to the AAPI excellence that is Warrior. And once again, we are so appreciative of Perry being on. Alrighty, guys. You can find Perry on Instagram at Perry Young Official. He posts a lot of great information, not just about the show, but about the Asian American experience and his activism. And he is truly a champion for the community. So once again, we thank you so much. Please subscribe to the Moana Nui podcast on YouTube and Twitch. And we hope everyone is safe, healthy, and we will see you guys all next time. Malama pono, ahui ho.